Romans 11:6. And if by grace, then it is no more of works, otherwise grace is no more grace. But if it be of works, then it is no more grace, otherwise works is no more work. So there's this really stupid argument from people who believe in works salvation, where they'll say the only time faith alone is mentioned is in James 2, where it says that we're not justified by faith alone. Any theological argument about explicit wording is usually stupid. Muslims love to say, well, Jesus never explicitly said, I am God, worship me. Yeah, you're right, he didn't. But if you think that he is a good prophet of God, then he should have resisted people worshipping him and calling him God if he wasn't those things. In fact, a lot of the time, the explicit use of a phrase means someone's talking about something tangential that might be being misunderstood about that phrase. So they're not actually talking about the phrase itself or its traditional meaning. So that's why it doesn't really matter that faith alone as an explicit phrase is only mentioned at one point in the Bible, and it's saying, well, here's the sense in which we're not justified by faith alone. Because this verse here, it does not say faith alone, but it is unambiguously teaching salvation by faith alone. In fact, it's teaching faith alone arguably more explicitly than if it used the exact words. What it's saying here is, if we're saved by grace, then there can't possibly be any works involved. If there was just one iota of works, if you're saying, well, it's 99.9% Jesus Christ dying on the cross, God's grace that he has forgiven me and declared me righteous apart from my works, although it is 0.1% my work, you do not believe in the gospel. If you're saying it is just a tiny fraction of a percentage, if you're including any works whatsoever, you have rejected God's grace. But yeah, to be honest with you, a lot of the time when I'm teaching salvation by faith alone, I don't use the explicit phrase faith alone, because that's been so often misused by Catholic light Protestants. They'll say things like, well, we believe in faith alone, but faith that saves is never alone. So what I would say is you're saved by faith, and that means that no matter how much sin you do, no matter how little work you do, none of that has any implications whatsoever to whether or not you are saved. And interestingly enough, that's exactly what Paul is doing here. When he's trying to stress what he's saying, he doesn't just say, we're saved by faith alone through grace alone. No, he makes it clear. If we are having faith in God's grace, then it cannot be even slightly of work. When you're talking about theology, I think it's quite good to avoid using labels sometimes. If you say faith alone, people can have an argument about what exactly you mean by that. But if you say what Paul says here, that if we're saved by works, then it's no more of grace, there's no room for interpretation there, no room for ambiguity. So yeah, it is kind of funny that the strongest verses on faith alone don't mention faith alone, but that's because you've actually got to think about what the verses are saying in terms of their substance, rather than just trying to identify theological labels.